Thank you so much for being here. My name is Kate Ryan. I'm Executive Director of the Colorado Water Trust. Vicki and I are going to be moderating this evening, so we're going to spend just a couple minutes telling you about the organizations that we work with before diving into questions with our panelists. Colorado Water Trust has been restoring water to Colorado's rivers for 25 years now. We work all over the state, and one of the areas in which we work is the Eagle Valley. Colorado Water Trust has a fair amount in common with Eagle County, if you didn't know. Colorado Water Trust was put together by a group of water rights attorneys and engineers back in 2001. And they wanted to do for rivers what they had been doing for their clients for many years as a career. So for those attorneys, you may know Mike Browning, who lives in the area and is on the board of Eagle River Coalition. He was one of those attorneys, and their idea was, we've been doing work in water rights and securing water for clients like the Eagle River Water Authority and Eagle River Watershed for decades. Why don't we do that work for the rivers here? I was a junior attorney working for them at the time, and we got to work on some of the early water court applications that secured water for the environment. One of those is on Hat Creek, which is tributary to East Brush. So every summer now, there's water secured on Hat Creek that flows down to East Brush Creek. And since 2012, that work has protected over 7,000 acre-feet of water in this valley here. So that's what Colorado Water Trust does, and I'm going to pass it over to Vicki to talk about her work.
Good evening. Thanks for being here with us. I'm Vicki with the Eagle River Coalition. Am I echoing? Yeah. Oh, good. Okay, let's try. Hello? Okay. Sorry about that. The Eagle River Coalition advocates for the health of our watershed here in Eagle County. We start up at Tennessee Pass and cover 970 miles here in our valley. We restore, we advocate, we monitor, and educate here. So we do that through a number of ways, and some of them you might know a little bit about. One of the reasons we were founded started with the Community Pride Highway Cleanup, and we've actually got that coming up May 2nd, where you'll see volunteers out coordinating. We've got it coordinated with CDOT, and we'll be on I-70 and a few other of the roadways, 6, where we have almost 800 volunteers picking up trash on our roadways. That is originally how we were founded as an organization. So if you haven't volunteered yet, it's actually really fun. We do a Weirdest Trash prize, and yeah, you can sign up for that through Friday of this week. Through restoration, a few of the projects that we work on is Restore the Gore, which is in Vail. We currently have a big project this summer that we're hoping to wrap up at Merriman Creek, and another project at Abrams that we're kicking off any day. So those are a few of our restoration projects. We host the Eagle River Water Fest, which is where we bring together all of the 5th graders in our community for a day of learning all sorts of different things about water. So you'd be surprised to know that many of them know the highway that they drive on, but they don't know the river's name in our community. So that's just one of the little things that we teach them that day. We are hosting in June a water law seminar with water attorney Aaron Clay, which is an 8-hour seminar, and you will learn everything about water and law from us. It's actually pretty fascinating, so if you, we still have a few spots available. Check out our website for that. And one of the other things, we actually have Allegra from ECCD here today, the Conservation District, but we partner with Beyond Lawn on a Beyond Lawn project where we help restore the water, the turf. We go in and look at different landscapes and help them be water-wise. Currently, we have a rain barrel sale. So this is a good time. Ask David, he's the man back there, to purchase a water barrel for your yard. So that's part of that program. We also have led the efforts with the community water plan here in our community, and we continue to prioritize various projects and programs throughout the valley to really figure out what those priorities are and what the community needs are. We're always looking for volunteers. So again, I mentioned a few of our opportunities. Check out our website. If you are a staff or board member for the Eagle River Coalition, I did just want you to raise your hand so people know who you are, and even former board members. Yes, thank you. So there's a number of us here that can always answer any of your questions as well. So now we'll get kicked off with the panelists' introduction.
Hi everyone, I'm Chandler Henry, and I'm so excited to be here tonight, and thanks to you guys for sponsoring this great event. I was born and raised in Eagle. There were about 800 people there when I left high school, for a little perspective. Now there's around 11,000. Still a great small town, but much bigger than it was, and agriculture was a much bigger percentage of the county and the town than it is now, certainly. I'm a fourth generation Colorado, and I would say that I am ag adjacent or an ag ally. My mother and her brothers grew up on a ranch in Garfield County. My uncles ranched there their entire life, and my younger sister is ranching that land right now. So I'm close to what's going on in the ag community world. And I would just say that sort of to kick off the way I think about ag in Eagle County and in the Western Slope is it's our heart and soul. It's our heritage. It's so iconic. It's when we see these big open lands, that's because of agriculture. And so it really feels like it's who we are. As far as my career, I worked for many years at Colorado Mountain College. I've been an Eagle County Commissioner for about 12 years through the beginning of 2025. Small business owner, and staying active, trying to stay active in water and public lands issues. I'm on the board of directors of the Colorado River District and on the statewide Water Quality Control Commission, working on public lands through organizations like Wilderness Workshop. So that's me, and I'm excited to be here with all of you tonight.
Hi, I'm Marsha Daughenbaugh, and I am a lifelong resident of Drought County to your north. My family has been in ranching and hay production now for close to 100 years in the valley, the Elk River Valley. And my career was 25 and a half years with the USDA Farm Service Agency, and then 15 years with a nonprofit called Community Agriculture Alliance, which became the educational outreach arm of the Yampa White Green Roundtable. I'm currently a board member of the Colorado Water Trust, and that's why I'm lucky enough to be here with you this evening. So thank you for asking me.
Thank you. My name is Scott Jones. Let's see. Longtime resident of Eagle County, born and raised here. My dad is Steve Jones, started Beaver Creek Stables. A lot of you guys might know. I've been in the ranching my whole life, growing up Rush Creek, and then in my former life, I was a manager of the Colorado River Ranch for 16 years, which had one of the state's oldest water rights. I currently, my family, we're still ranching. We have 60 head of cattle, about 15 head of horses up in Rush Creek right now. I've also sit on the Eagle County Conservation Board. I am the former president of Colorado Association of Conservation Districts. Now I'm representing the state at the National Conservation Districts, which we just had a big fly-in a few And I am also the president of the Colorado River Watershed.
So sorry, just real quick. I think we might want to try ditching the mics because it's a little hard. Does anyone have trouble hearing right now? We're okay with ditching the mics? Yeah. We'll turn these off. This is your chance to move forward if you want. We've got a lot of seats in the front, so get cozy if you want. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
All right.
I can leave this on behind you so someone feels the need. Grab another piece of
They want more pizza?
There's so much. Okay, here we are. Yeah, it was. Okay, Peter. Should we just have a couple more?
We can try with one. I don't know if it's going to be better. Like I said, this one's off, and then this one's just muted. Maybe try for a second and then ask the room. But I think it might be best without the mic. So you guys can song 50.
All right. I can talk pretty loud, but let's see.
The volume down?
Hello? Well, lucky I have a loud voice. All right. We're starting the questions. Are you ready? Are you guys ready? Okay.
Oh, here.
Please paint the picture of what agriculture looks like in Eagle County.
So there's a lot of ag in Eagle County, still to this day. Mainly, I guess there's still ag in Lake Creek, all the way to Gibson Creek, and then everything to the north in Eagle County. So Burns, Colorado, along the Colorado River, 131, a lot of branches. And there's also a lot of grazing permits into the BLM and Forest Service around our mountains. As far as irrigation goes in Eagle County, there's a program called National Resource Association. We've abbreviations NRCS. They are a government-funded entity, and they have been doing improvements of irrigation in Eagle County for quite a few years. So they actually have a pivot up there that's a mile long that NRCS paid for the materials. Just to let you know, little brief history of a pivot. Pivot is about 80% more efficient with water. Then you have wheel lines, which are about 45% more efficient with water. Big guns, flood irrigation. There's still a lot of flood irrigation in our community. Flood irrigation is really good. So we need to stop flooding. It still helps the groundwater get back into the ground.
Great. Well, I'll fill in sort of from a 50,000 foot level. So Scott's talking about on the ground and what it looks like on the ground. When you think about the county as a whole, we are over 85% public land. So that's Forest Service, that's BLM, that's state lands, and that's county open space. So that leaves about 10 to 15% that's private land, including agriculture. Ag contributes to that sense of open space here, but it's only a small percentage of our economy. Eagle County has about 55,000 people, about 36,000 jobs. Anybody know what the biggest job sector is in the county?
Service.
Yeah, food service and accommodations. About a quarter of all the jobs are in in that sector, and then 10% each in arts, entertainment, recreation, construction, retail, and healthcare. So how much do you think is in agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting?
3%.
0.01%. So 0.01. So it's a sliver of our economy. According to the USDA, there were 211 farms in 2022 in Eagle County, covering 127,000 acres, most of that being pasture land. But I would say that ag has an outside influence here because of the open space nature of it, because of the ecosystem services that it provides. Scott talked about flood irrigation. All that water flows into the ground and is retimed to come out and fill the rivers for rafting and the recreation economy and downstream wells, and just because of our heritage and who we are. So sliver of the economy, but outsized influence.
Is that less than 1%?
0.01%
Is
of the jobs. So it's, you know,
Or in agriculture.
or in agriculture, forestry, hunting, and fishing. So small number of jobs. That's because the people out of the jobs probably are doing 6 or 7 jobs.
Is that number revised after the federal government laid off all the Forest Service employees?
Good question. Yeah. Good question. It's in 2024, so should be a good number.
That could be a significant adjustment.
Yeah. There's a Colorado Senator Mark Catlin, who's from Montrose County, and he said that Colorado's last crop is going to be rooftops. So we don't want that to happen. Rooftops.
Another question for you all, and Marsha, maybe you could kick this one off. But so at Colorado Water Trust, a lot of our work involves projects where we share water with agricultural partners. Sometimes we'll lease their water for part of the season, or otherwise get into agreements where we can help them share their water with the river. But in doing so, one of the things that we've observed that's really, really marked is that our rivers and streams are getting much, much drier. It used to be that we had some projects we wouldn't operate when rivers had a good snowpack year and they were flowing pretty well. We haven't had that happen since 2019. And the other thing that we see is that runoff. Our snowmelt is happening much, much earlier. And this year is a jaw-dropping example of that. So, sorry to start you off with that, Marsha.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your operations and how is this change in snowpack influencing farms and ranches?
Sure, Kate. First of all, though, I'd like to ask, how many people are actively involved in agriculture in this room? Would you put your hands in the air? All right, let me rephrase that. How many of you eat, drink, or wear clothing? Well, then you're actively involved in agriculture. And it's very important for those of us that are still in production agriculture to have you realize how important it is that you protect your farms and ranches. And of course, water is one of the issues that is so important. Yes, Kate, you are absolutely correct. This is a tough, tough year. And I've spoken with a lot of the people who are in production agriculture up in our region, and everyone is like, we don't know what we're going to do. We don't know whether we should be selling cattle right now because we know that we're not going to have the grass in our pastures. The springs have not come in this year. A lot of them are just already running dry. The ponds that normally have water in them all summer long are already yucky. You're not going to be able to put cattle in and have them feed out or water out of those ponds. So when we turn into these pastures, we know that we're either going to have to haul a lot of water if we can find a way to do that, or we're going to have to cut back herds. So that's the first discussion that people are starting to have already. The second one is that the grass isn't growing. We didn't have the water to go into the ground, and so what is there, and then we had this constant wind, is really drying the ground out. And so people are, normally we don't turn into pastures until the third week in May, up into the high country. My son-in-law just told me the other day that he's going to have to brand about half of his calves right now and put those cows out into a pasture because there's no water and the grass isn't coming. So he's just one of all of the ranchers in our region that are starting to have these discussions and trying to figure out what we're going to do without water, without rain. Even if we get a good amount of rain, it's not going to fill up what we need to have.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's real. The conversations. So as a cattle producer, cattle prices are all at a record high. You guys are paying for it at the grocery store. So if I sell my cows, I'm losing my profit. But if I have to wait till the end of the year to see how much hay we have to buy or go buy hay now, it's double the price of what it was last year. Last year we paid $200 a ton. You're looking at this year paying $300 to $400. If you can find it.
Yeah, where does it come from?
Who knows? I've bought hay all the way from North Dakota before.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those catch-22s. I just talked to a gentleman that has a huge feed lot, and a lot of people are actually taking pairs to him to feed out in his feed lot because corn's cheap. So, you know, that's the fun thing with ranching is never repeats itself. It is never a dull moment. So, you know, but at the same time too, you know, it's not doom and gloom with it either. If there was more ranchers in here, they'd be like, well, rain today, you know.
And
So
next year will be better.
Next year will be better, you know. So, you know, you have to have that positive attitude, you know, when it comes to this stuff. Other than that, then get out of it.
Kate, I wanted to tag on a little bit of what you said about the snowpack and the runoff, and it's, you know, people are starting to talk about the flat hydrograph, and we're all used to here looking at the snow building up all winter, gets to a high point, and then it drops down about June 1st or so and gets low in the summer. It starts back up in the fall. Well, this year is a great example of that flat hydrograph. It just, you know, we had a very early runoff and not much at all. It never went up. So is that what the future looks like? We don't really know. And for those of us who are townies, you know, the water providers are talking about not talking about drought so much, but talking about water shortages, which I think is a brilliant way to talk about it. And it really is more the way that ag looks at water. They can't just pay more money and get more water like you can if you live at Mountain Star, for example. You know, when the ditch commissioner comes around and shuts off your head gate, the water is gone. That would be like the utilities coming and shutting off your spigot to your outdoor watering. So I think that those shortages that ag knows how to deal with and has been dealing with for years are hitting across the board with that flat hydrograph, and we're all going to have to figure out how to adapt to that.
Got a question.
How much of your cattle feed do you actually, in a normal year, produce versus what you have to buy?
Most ranchers around here, they usually have an abundance of it. So it's a secondary income to their cattle operation. Rule of thumb is if you don't raise enough hay, don't own those cattle, because then it's going to cost you every year. So it's just like any business. It's cost of production. It's cost of living. So wherever those costs are, and this kind of goes back to Kathy saying, well, it's only 0.5. Well, these ranches are family owned. So they don't have employees. They raise their employees. So it's one of those things where if you're not typically raising enough hay to feed your cows, you might want to be cutting back on your cattle. Or having a desert permit, hauling the cattle. A lot of people up north of us, they haul their cattle to the eastern slopes for the winter. So each operation is just a touch different, but
but it works for them. You know, and that's at the end of the day. So if it does work out that you have to buy hay or you produce enough hay, it's just that where are you in the black and the red?
Most of us don't like to buy hay because what that does is bring in different species of grasses and weeds on your property. And presents a whole other problem you have to deal with for a lot of years. So, as Scott said, you limit the number of head that you can produce for the grasses and the hay that you can grow. And that gets us into a whole other thing of whether we can find properties to lease or have to do it with our own needed properties.
What's the frequency that a typical West Slope Colorado rancher could absorb a really bad year like this over a long period of years and have their business be resilient?
Do they own the land or they got payments on it? There's $1 million
I mean,
question.
that's a lot to that question,
Right.
obviously. 1 in 3, 1 in 5.
That's the difference of like me being I'm 40 something and born and raised in this valley. I had to go down the path of staying in this business to become a manager. I couldn't go buy a ranch. $10,000, I mean, back in the day, early 2000s, agricultural land was going for $10,000 an acre. Okay, well, you gotta, figure out how many, 1,000 acres, $10 million. Well, how much hay can I get off 100,000 acre? And a typical in western Colorado, your cattle come down to the meadows on your private ground, on your meadows in the wintertime. Then in the summertime, that's where your BLM permits, your Forest Service permits go. So, or private land permits, whatever you want. So then the cattle go to the high country, and then that allows you to grow hay on the lower meadows and irrigate and et cetera, et cetera. So that's typical western, how it works in the west is all the cattle leave in the summertime in the meadows. But it just boils down to if you have payments. If a lot of the land in Eagle County other Burns was homestead, and it's still owned by the same family that homesteaded. So that's how they acquired that land. So, but if you're trying to buy it, it just depends on how big your pockets are.
How many acres do you need to support one cow?
It depends on the type of ground, what your grasses can produce. In our area, we figure that we need at least 12 to 15 to 20 acres per animal unit. That's a
12 to
cow-calf.
20 acres for one cow.
Cow-calf unit.
So you have 60 cows at 10 acres. That's 600 acres to support 60 cows.
And then do the price of how much land is in it.
And then you need water rights.
Yeah, well, hopefully you buy land with water.
Attempting to put it in perspective. 600 acres with water to irrigate.
Just a technical one, you said your son-in-law put the cows out to pasture?
He's going to probably in the next 2 weeks, yes.
And where were they before? They're on the zone land and then they go to public land? Is that what you're?
No, we don't have any public ground on our operation. We have deeded acreage, and during the winter time, all of the cows are down on the meadows close to the homestead, and that's where they're fed hay all winter long. And in a normal year, we try to brand the 3rd week in May, and then they go into the pastures, wherever that might be, for the summer, for about 4 months. And then they come down, the calves are weaned off. The cows stay in the lower country in the hay meadows, which have now grown this much hay. And that's where they will stay until it snows through the winter, and then we start that whole process again. To tag on with what Scott said, the old adage is, to be able to afford the ranch, you have to, it's the womb, the groom, or the tomb. You either get your ground by being born into it, marrying into it, or die with it.
All right. Question. What's the largest ranch operating producing cattle in Eagle County?
You want a name or just the size?
Pardon?
Name or the size?
Name. Family or
Susan Nottingham. That's this Nottingham.
Up the Colorado River Road.
and how many head of cattle does she have?
1,000 mamas.
Huh?
1,000 mamas.
That's a significant operation.
It is a significant operation. She had it for sale. She had it for sale for $90 million.
She just put it under conservation.
She did. Congratulations. I think
Yes.
that's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the family that started here. They were the sheep herders, Bill Nottingham. That was her dad, and he was really smart. When he sold this land and developed Edwards and the gravel pits and the hotels, he started buying up towards Burns. He actually used to own the Colorado River Ranch, and then he bought the Benton Ranch and some other ranches up there. That's what she just recently put the conservation easement on.
All right, can everybody hear when we're speaking up here? Yeah, and can you hear when people ask questions in the audience? No? Okay.
Oh, we'll repeat
Okay,
those.
we'll either repeat them or maybe we do have questions at a big space of questions at the end if you want to jot them down. Then we can all speak real loud. Okay, got a question. Scott, I'll start with you, okay? What are farmers and ranchers talking about when they gather, and how has this topic of water availability or water conservation changed in the past decade?
What are they talking about? They're not really talking about water these days. So, to be completely honest, they're more talking about wolves. But water, wolves.
Is that really a bigger concern than water this year?
Yeah, it really is. I hate to say that, but it really is to those guys.
I didn't hear that question.
He said, is it really more concerning than water? And it is to them. You know, water, it's, I think it was answered, I think you answered it the best earlier, you know, so water is one of those issues they have a positive outlook on. Are they going to have to haul, you know, a lot of my friends have already rented water trucks, they're already prepared to go down that road. They're gonna have to turn out maybe a little later this year, feed a little bit more hay that they had in reserves. Or take them to the feed lot, or start calling out their herd, slimming down their herd before they turn out. I have heard rumors that BLM is making them cut back on numbers, so that's gonna have a dictation what they're going to be talking about. But to be completely honest, a lot of ranchers for the last 5 years have been improving their soil health programs on their range. They have been trying to get more drought resistant plants on their range. So a lot of that is paying off for the ones that are doing it. The other ones that are doing it, they'll work with what the good Lord gives them, I guess. Yeah.
I would say the ranchers that come to the River District or who are on the River District Board talk a lot about storage and mostly the lack thereof. We don't have a lot of high mountain storage, and a lot of the storage reservoirs that Colorado does have, think Dillon Reservoir, Green Mountain Reservoir, they're for the Front Range diverters, so they're not for ag on the western slope. The big CRISP unit, the Colorado Reservoir Storage Program, Flaming Gorge, Navajo Lake, Blue Mesa, and Lake Powell, those are all connected to the big river and sending water downstream to the lower basin states. So storage is something that some of the ag folks talk about as something that would be helpful to have, especially in years like this, to be able to store some water. Our biggest storage reservoir is, or has been, right up there, the snowpack. So the snow on the mountains is the Western Slopes Reservoir. So when we don't get that snow, I mean, is this year an anomaly, or is this year part of things to come with this Climate Action Week that Walking Mountains is doing. You know, how do we think about that, and how do we think about that reservoir storage that we certainly don't have this year? Those reservoirs are empty. Paonia Reservoir is empty when you drive by it. Those reservoirs that fill up in the spring to feed out to the irrigation ditches the rest of the summer, they're pretty empty. Lake Powell is under 30%. Lake Mead is about 30%. So that's a topic that I hear about.
Rock County, there's concerns about the wolves, but it is not the overwhelming conversation right now. I think that probably water is big. Everybody's talking our lack of water and where are we going to be from the headwaters of the Elk River and the Yampa River. What is this going to do to us? Development is a big issue. We are seeing more and more encroachment on agricultural grounds with, I call them the pandemic purchasers, people that came in, had lots and lots of money, bought up some of these ranches, and have no appreciation of or want to find out about the culture and what agriculture actually does for us. So as we're seeing that happen, we're also seeing how the wildlife is changing. Your agriculture lands are where a lot of your ranching is. In Drought County, I mean, where your wildlife is. In Drought County, we're about 50% federal grounds, most of it being U.S. Forest Service. Because of the recreation that's going into the high country, that wildlife is now coming down more onto our ranch lands. And we all love the wildlife, that's not the issue. But all of a sudden, we're being asked to feed, care for them year round. And it is becoming an issue because when you do have that type of pressure from the wildlife on your property, that means you can not feed as many cows, whether it's hay or pasture ground. Also, the cost of production has just gotten terribly high. You can't afford to go buy a tractor anymore. You can't, the price of diesel is going sky high. All of our expenses are just rising like this. Yes, cattle prices are high, but we know that ain't gonna last forever. And so there's just, you're balancing all the time, and if you don't have a good banker, you probably aren't gonna make it for a while.
What I find interesting is that in Eagle County, we think in terms of cattle and ranching being our agriculture, when historically, when you reach back in the history of Eagle County, the cash crops, the money the farmers, the ranchers depended on were potatoes and lettuce. And somehow we've evolved from producing potatoes and lettuce to being essentially a totally cattle-oriented agricultural industry. If you wanted to have cash in the bank in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, you raised potatoes.
Well,
and cattle for a little more money.
Yeah, but back then cattle made less money than the potatoes.
That's right.
So the potatoes, you'll like this question. Where was the largest iceberg lettuce producing place in the United States?
Buena Vista.
Huh? Tapones.
Say again?
Tapones was the iceberg iceberg lettuce capital of the world, or the United States. So, but back then, you could make profit off that. You can't make profit off of potatoes. The potatoes are done up in Idaho. It's just no different than like the Corn Belt. You know, we have Western Colorado, Olathe, and all of that country. They grow corn. They want a lot of money for that corn compared to what they want for it in Nebraska. I can go to Nebraska, truck it here, get it cheaper than what I can get it for out of Olathe. So it's just it's where those profit margin lines are.
So another question, Marsha, thank you for pointing out our connection to agriculture. And another water hero, I think, we have in Colorado is Robert Sakata. I don't know if anybody knows him. He's an agricultural producer out in the Front Range around Adams County. And he is also working for the state of Colorado doing water policy advising for the Department of Agriculture. He likes to say that without Colorado agriculture, we would be hungry, naked, and sober, which is awesome. So my question for the rest of you, and Kathy, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off, is there anything in particular that you wish people who we're connected to agriculture, but maybe we don't know those connections as deeply or as strongly as we should, what should we know about agriculture?
A couple of things come to mind, and as I say, my sister is an ag producer, and she's always saying agriculture has a target on its back, and I've talked to her about that, and she's like, why do you say that? And I understand that. You read lots of things in the paper that 80% of the water is consumed by agriculture, and what if we just didn't eat meat anymore? What if we got rid of all the cows and all of our problems would be solved? I think that's really, it's short-sighted, would be hungry for one thing, but it's, agriculture owns 80% of the water rights. That doesn't necessarily translate to wet water, and I think people don't really understand that agriculture is dependent on hydrology, it's dependent on snow and rain. So they have those water rights, but that water also provides wetlands. All the agriculture water fills up the wetlands where the birds are and the wildlife is. That agriculture water fills up people's wells for their drinking water. That agricultural land filters pollutants and keeps our land and our soil clean. So it's really looking at just a tiny sliver of things to say, if ag didn't use all that water, Colorado would be an oasis or something. I just think that's not true. Agriculture uses that water in a very conservation-minded way, and it provides services for everything that all the rest of us do. And I think that's something that people who aren't connected to agriculture don't quite understand.
I look at agricultural producers as your initial environmentalists. We had to step up long before the word was in vogue to make sure that our grounds were protected, that our water was protected, that the air was protected. And somewhere along the line, agriculture got a really bad rap for what we were doing. I think it was our fault for letting that happen because we just wanted to be left alone and we didn't get out and tell our stories. But if it were not for our agricultural lands, we wouldn't have a lot of what we have now. If we had initially put everything into housing and development, it'd be a whole different world that we live in. And for us to have to be able to sustain on our properties, we have to be taking care of it 24/7, 365 days. And we're looking long range. It's not what the lawn is going to look like tomorrow. It's what our grasses are going to look like 3 years down the road because we're doing the soil prep and the soil work right now. So I think that's the message that I would like to get out, is that we were the original environmentalists. We were the original people involved in conservation, and we continue to do that day in and day out.
How do I follow that? So Colorado is a very unique state. We have these high mountains, and in these high mountains, the forage that is grown here is higher in protein, higher in sugar than almost anywhere else in this country. That is real. Our calves come off the mountains weighing more pounds, and the buyers know it, and they pay more money for high mountain raised cattle. They're hardier, they're tougher, they travel better, they do better in feedlots, they sell for the premium, they do taste better. And then the nice thing is that we have eastern Colorado that's in the Corn Belt. So all of our cattle that are raised up in the mountains, they all go right down east and eat all of that beautiful corn that's raised in eastern Colorado. So Colorado is a very unique state into that. And it's been tough being in agricultural. You know, there's been a lot of policies that have come up and issues that I, as a person in the conservation district, that we rally against. We go down to the legislators in the state, go to the legislators in DC, and we carry the flag for agricultural, because we're the ones that are up in the mountains helping the forests. We're the ones that are trying to leave a future for everybody to enjoy. Where that turned and went bad, I have no idea. But it's proven fact that cattle, and we're using technology too. Eagle County Conservation District did a virtual fencing with cattle study for 5 years. Allegra, it's right there, she did it. If you want to ask her any questions. But it works. So the technology is coming. So it's finding the balance of where rec, ag, and the enjoyment of Western Colorado that we all live here and get to enjoy.
I've got a real life example of something that happened this probably as a direct result of ag going away, and that is up the Brush Creek Valley outside of Eagle. A few years ago, I got a call early in the morning saying Brush Creek is dry, and there was a segment of Brush Creek through Eagle Ranch that had gone dry. It was in August, and the fish were dying on the sides of the creek. And I think, why did that happen? Well, it hadn't rained, of course, and it was late in the summer, so the snow was gone. But it likely also happened because the whole rest of the valley wasn't being flood irrigated, and those soils weren't holding that water to release back into the creek. So there was fish kill, there was recreational issues. The town of Eagle that's where they get their drinking water. So that's a direct connection there between what happens with ag and what happens with buy and dry. You know, you turn it into housing units instead of agriculture, where the water is seeping into the ground and it causes all sorts of related issues.
What is the opportunity in Eagle County to create other agricultural activity? The Roaring Fork Valley, Garfield, and Drought counties have set aside some amount of acreage, 50 or more, that they're making available at low lease rates with water for people who want to participate in agricultural activity. And whether they're raising vegetables, potatoes, lettuce, carrots, for the local markets, or chickens, or pigs. So what they're sponsoring, supporting are small farms, creating an agricultural basis for Garfield County, that area. Does Eagle County potentially have interest in providing opportunity for, I'm going to call them young farmers? I want to become a producing farmer. I want to raise chickens, fryers, for women to take home and cook, or eggs. Or I want to raise pigs and sell pork. That's available to us, but we don't support that in Eagle County.
No, they support it. The program's there. No, Eagle County Open Space, they've purchased a ranch up Brush Creek that I grew up on, now all under open space. The potential there, they have the Eagle Ranch Community Gardens. There's a lot of that potential there, and I think I think they were kind of at a point where they were like, okay, let's see what happens with Picking County and let's learn from their mistakes. So I really think that that is coming down the pipeline. It's just, a lot of it's already leased. So I think there's a future there, but, and Eagle County Open Space and Eagle County Land Trust are doing those projects that are there to help that part of the community out that want.
But if my son or a grandson wanted to raise pigs or put in 5 acres of potatoes, Eagle County does not have a vehicle on Brush Creek Ranch, for example, where that can happen. And I think if we want agriculture in the valley, new, versus old established farmers, there has to be an effort made to enable people to get into agriculture in an affordable manner, because you cannot buy it, we know that.
I'll just repeat the question so people can hear. The question is generally speaking about, could Eagle County replicate some programs that have been done in Garfield County to provide new space for new agricultural producers in the area?
Lee, you must have seen the questions because there's one coming up on, what government can do.
When Brush Creek Ranch was acquired as open space in Eagle County, I've got a file of 6 or 7 letters, an intense effort to convince Eagle County to make available agricultural land at Brush Creek.
I think
And they made the decision to not do that.
I think there is a lot of room for improvement there, a lot of room for growth. One of the issues, like Scott's pointed out, is the cost of land. But there are feeder things going into that. The Conservation District is doing such amazing work, and the taxpayers passed a tax increase to up the work that they can do. The 4-H program is going great guns, so there are kids out there, even town kids, learning how to raise ducks and geese and pigs, and there's places where they can keep their animals if they don't have a place. But I think you're right, there is a lot of opportunity to do some more. There's a young farmers group that operates over in Missouri Heights, and they operate on some farms and ranches that people are retiring or elderly and want to keep working, and they're connected with these young farmers. So I think that's a good opportunity area.
That includes alternative crops that haven't been historically grown around here.
Like marijuana?
So I'm gonna double down on that question. I think so. The question was, would that include considering alternative crops? So I guess to everybody, just a little bit more broadly, where do you see the future of agriculture going in this region? And if you think it might or might not, does that include any role for local government or NGOs?
I'll kick it off. I'm in my mid-70s, and I remain optimistic that we do need agriculture. I was raised under that precept by my grandparents and my parents. I definitely passed it on to our kids and my grandkids as well. It's not going to be the same as it was for my grandfather and my grandmother when they were farming. And it's not the same as it was for my dad. It's definitely not the same as it was when Doc and I, my husband and I were doing it. Agriculture has to adapt. But yes, I'm always optimistic about the future of agriculture. And I know that we're always going to have to eat. And we have some opportunities for young people to get started. But they have to be innovative. And we as the ultras have to be innovative to go with them, to make sure that it happens. Absolutely. I looked up Eagle County and all the different groups that are involved trying to sustain what's going on here. Absolutely amazing. Drought County is the same way. What do we have, Mindy? 140 some nonprofits in different areas.
Per capita more than anywhere else in Colorado, for sure.
Mandy, do you know? there are so many groups out here working, trying to make sure that in the future, we're all gonna survive whatever's going to happen. So I'm optimistic about agriculture. Yes, ma'am.
So this is a little broader question. And if you feel it's inappropriate, you can say so, but we all know that the upper and lower basin states could not come to an agreement, and now our dear government is going to be taking over that. Federal government is going to be taking over that aspect of water in the West. And I'm wondering what type of concern and how much interest is there from the ag business in having input into this? Did they have it in prior to the states not being able to come to agreement? Because I see this as a big problem for everybody coming down the pipe.
The answer, her question is, have people been involved in the water situations on the Colorado River? And the answer is absolutely yes, they have. The roundtables that were convened 20 years ago have been trying to deal with this, the issues across the state, and they're called roundtables because every interest in water had to be at those 9 different tables around the state. And I was sat in on some of those early ones. They weren't pleasant. It took a lot of knuckle busting to get people to even sit down and have those conversations at first. What's happening in the Colorado River is a whole other thing, and we could spend 5 hours talking about that and where it's going to help. I'm afraid for it. The last thing I wanted was for the Bureau of Reclamation to be the one in charge of this. And what is it, October 30th? They have to tell us what we're going to do.
Start with you, Marsha.
All right.
How can the average Coloradan advocate for the future of sustainable agriculture and rivers? What's the call to action, if there is one?
Oh boy, this is where my soapbox comes on. Please, please, please be educated. Don't sign a petition at the post office when you're asked by someone you don't know. Ask them what they know about that petition. You're going to see some big things come down concerning water that are going to have huge impacts on the state of Colorado. And one, it could be that to change the water rights from private to the government. Now, I know I'm biased, but at this point, most water rights in the state of Colorado, I believe it's 82%, are held by private ranches and farms. Over the years, we've done a pretty dang good job of protecting that water. And I have real fear that if that ever goes to the government, that those water rights will not be as protected as well as they have been under agriculture. Because we understand the water and we understand, and it's our livelihoods. When you sign something at the post office and then it goes to public vote, we in agriculture will lose that battle. The wolves is a prime example of that. The impact that has had on agricultural producers has been huge. The ag communities voted it down, the urban communities voted for it. Guess where the wolves are? They're not in the urban community. I guess they found one in Douglas County. And it'll be the same with water. If we don't protect our agricultural rural rights, we're going to have some real issues in the state of Colorado. So before you sign your name on a petition, make sure that you really understand what they're asking, what that bill would do. And then if you're confused when it's time to vote, come talk to somebody that's actually in production agriculture if you can find the 0.01% of us. But stop in and visit with us about the impact that some of these things that you're going to get to vote on will have. Sorry.
All right, so what can we do? Yeah, I would say, and Marsha brought this up at the very beginning, just remember that we're all in this together. And it's environmentalists, recreationists, agriculture, everybody is valuing the land and trying to be good stewards and remembering that we're all in together. And I'm optimistic too. I mean, Eagle County came out in force to support the Conservation District, to allow them to do a lot more work. They came out in force to support the Colorado River District, to generate a community partnership program to fund agriculture, to fund irrigation, to keep the water rights and the Shoshone water rights in the Colorado River. So I think all those things, those impact all of us, and just remembering that we're all connected is really important.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, as far as water users go, agricultural does use the water, and we try to use it in the most responsible way, but there's also other industries in this valley that use water as well. Golf courses. It's pretty amazing when you see how big of pumps they put in this little bitty river and how far they pump their water to get their green golf courses. If we were doing that with agricultural, they'd hang us up to dry. So, and as a person that's born and raised in this valley and has 2 little children that we hope to stay in this valley and keep producing in agricultural, and to see all of the generation kids that are my age and their kids and living that generations in this valley, and they still love it. It's still the right way to live in this town, in my mind. And so I think the future is really bright for agricultural. It might not ever grow to a huge scale where the employment sector makes money on it, but also at the same time too, it's what's built this valley, you know, is our Western heritage, you know, and that's what I always preach to everybody is, don't lose the Western heritage, you know. It's what shaped all of these mountains and the way that the big businesses do their businesses and why people move here and want to raise their family here because of that Western heritage. Kathy said, I mean, all the 4-H barns are completely full of animals for 4-H kids. 4-H is a growing program in this valley. So I'm optimistic, I guess. But you know, as I guess I could say on the end note is, you know, it's fun. It's also fun. And if you ever get an opportunity to go to a ranch and take a tour, or meet somebody in the grocery store, or go to the Rocky Mountain Nut Fry, or whatever, talk to those guys. It's a hoot. They'll invite you out. It's fun. We have nothing to lose having people come out there, as long as you don't get hurt. But we have nothing to lose. So enjoy it, you know.
Thank you, guys. As we move into around 10 or 15 minutes for questions and answers, I just want to acknowledge, as somebody who works in environmental water, what an important and close role agriculture plays with our work keeping water in rivers. I think you asked a question about our work on Hat Creek, for instance. That was an instance in which Colorado Water Trust worked with an existing water right. It was actually a water right that was owned by Vail Associates that was donated to the Colorado Water Trust and the state to use for in-stream flow. And so that water right did transition entirely from an original senior agricultural water right to being an in-stream flow water right. And that is an incredible project on that piece of river. And I think about this in the big picture now when we talk about big river issues like the Colorado River. If we were to be as efficient as we possibly could and keep all the water in rivers that we possibly could and transition a lot of agricultural water to environmental water, our rivers would have a lot of water in them in June, most likely in July, and they would act a little bit like a pipeline going out of our state. It would be okay for some months of the year, and it would not be a great balance for the environment. Agriculture also plays a really important role in keeping some water on the land for wildlife. You think about sandhill cranes migrating through the state of Colorado. They rely on agriculture in order to do that. Agriculture to a great degree serves like wetlands in our state. We don't have the beavers we had 200 years ago. Beavers are a hot topic right now, but we're not ever going to have the amount of wetlands and beavers we had 200-300 years ago moving forward. And so agriculture can serve that role as a substitute for wetlands. That's what we're working with, and that's what we have now. And so we're looking at a balance. The other really, really important thing that agriculture does is it's the example that Kathy brought up for Brush Creek. When we put water on the land, some of it evaporates, some of it turns into your crops and you eat it, but a lot of it goes into the ground and it flows back into our rivers, and that's what keeps them flowing in August, September, October. If it weren't for agriculture, a lot of our rivers would be going completely dry during those times of the year. So when I think about the ultimate solution from an environmental perspective, it's more about balance. How do we work with agriculture to get a great balance for our rivers? Something that's good for the environment in all months of the year and that balances out our needs. And none of it's perfect, it's all really hard to work for, but we do a lot together. And so thank you so much for telling us more and helping us learn about agriculture and water, which is so important as a Coloradan. It's taken me decades to learn even half of what you guys know. And I don't know, it's just great. So
water flows downhill.
Who has questions? Yeah.
Great presentation, I appreciate that. But a couple things I would like to get your feedback from. You keep talking about the water going back into the system, but like recent articles have said that it's only 20 to 30% of irrigated water makes its way back into the aquifers or wherever you are. 20 to 30%. Not a tremendous amount. Versus water that's used by the humans indoors is 90 to 95% of that water gets back into the river. Okay, so that's a total disparity. So comment on that would be good. And then like I just was checking Google and they're trying to say that it takes 1,800 gallons of water to make 1 pound of beef.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Okay? Not that I believe that, but I'm just saying, you've got a hard road to hoe because you've got to grow the grass and you've got to grow the cows. I mean, the other answer is get rid of all the humans, get rid of the cows, and then let the world be, but I'm not one of those folks. But the issue is you've got to really figure out the future of agriculture has to do away with irrigation. Just like people irrigating that golf course or the lawn, you know, you can go grow your cows somewhere where there's a whole lot more water than you are in a semi-desert environment where we are today, especially if the irrigation water is not available.
I'll jump in on that one a little bit. It's a matter of timing. So you're right that household use water mostly returns to the system. So taking shorter showers is good, but it's not really going to provide the answer for us here. And it's like you said, is that the water comes in the spring in Colorado, flows straight down to Lake Powell and onto the lower basin states. The agricultural land holds it in, lets it out slowly in July and August. So it's a matter of keeping that, whatever that percentage is, and it's a timing issue.
Sure. On what?
not being efficient.
Oh, not being efficient.
It's consumptive. I mean, ag is consumptive. It goes into the plants, it goes into the
Yeah, I mean, like look at Brush Creek. Where's all the deer and elk? They're all on the hay meadows. You know, I mean, whether you man, this is a tough line to go down. Is because of the development, the wildlife is being pushed around. And being, whether cattle are on the land or not, the wildlife is there. When I was a young man or a young kid growing up Brush Creek, we never saw any elk herds on Brush Creek. Saw thousands of deer, but never any elk. Now all you see is elk. You see very little deer. And I know there's chronic waste, and I know there's diseases and all of that. But with the development that has happened over the last 40 years in this valley, it has changed the wildlife. So if it wasn't for agricultural to irrigate those meadows, to raise hay for their cattle, then where would the elk eat? What would be the overlay of what the land would look like if you took all the cattle off or moved them to a different environment? Then what would it look like? Would it be overgrown? Would it be a fire hazard? Who knows? I can't really answer that question, but all I know is that as ranchers, we try to do, first and foremost, put the land, because without the land, we have nothing. Whether you raise cows, horses, whatever, you have nothing. So you have to take care of the land. And how you do that is by trial and error and trying to get better. And that's what I think we're trying to do with this now.
All right, hamburgers.
Yeah.
I appreciate your asking that question. His question was, he had read that 1,800 gallons of water for a pound of hamburger. That study, because when that came out about, 12, 15 years ago, got my ire up, as you might imagine. And so I started researching it. And not only were they using the amount of water that cow had drank, but they were also using anything that was done in the processing plants, anything that was done in the grocery stores to wash the containers that the meat was put into. And so it had raised that quite high because it was a group that had wanted to do away with beef production in the United States for a variety of reasons. So it was not a fair representation of how much water a cow actually drinks to produce her calf.
Right, it does go on to say it's like 20 to 25 gallons per day per cow. And it does go say the bulk of this is for growing the feed, not the other things you're talking about, but I'm sure you're right.
No,
It's exaggerated. It's still a lot.
Cows drink a lot of water.
In the summertime.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah. Do you have a question in the middle?
Yeah, so I'm an AP environmental student, and I mostly just hear about like the bad sides of agriculture and irrigation. And I was wondering, you guys say that the drip irrigation is like turned around between the ranchers and the waters in the river. I was just wondering how polluted it gets from like the fertilizers and pesticides from the farms.
Oh, can I take a stab at that? Okay, Colorado. Welcome to good soils. We have amazing soils in this valley. Majority of ranchers do not fertilize their soils. Repeat, do not fertilize their soils. The cows do that. So we feed on our meadows in the wintertime in a way that the biology of what comes out of the cow, well, first off, she eats what comes off the land, first and foremost. Then she takes it through her system, leaves it back on the land as fertilizer. It's called regenerative egg. We've been doing it here for hundreds of years. That's how farming and ranching has been done in this valley for a very long time. There are ranchers that do use nitrogen to get that boost out of their plants, but in the mountains of Colorado, we really don't have to worry about what's going back into the river. I would be more concerned in an urban environment of what they spray on the lawns to keep them green and weeds killed. That's some pretty nasty stuff. So the only thing I would say that we try to do is stay up on the noxious weeds. It's about the only time we really go down the chemical route is for spraying noxious weeds.
Can I, sorry Marsha, can I add something to that? Just for Drought County, if you look for, there's an edge of field study that CSU did, that showed that actually the flood irrigation, the water was cleaner when it went back into the rivers. So if you want to look that up, it's a good study.
So the comment was that, yeah, there's a study in Drought County done by a CSU group that shows that for some water that's used in flood irrigation on a farm, the water that goes back into the river system is cleaner. A question back there?
I guess, so thinking about cattle and what we've already said is that cattle use a lot of water, but it is, in terms of drinking, right? We know that they also have methane production, things like that, but it is so culturally tied to this region, so culturally tied to who we are in the US. People eat a lot of beef, they want hamburgers, things like that. I guess my question is, in this region, in this area, we have the ability for grass-fed, and we have grass-raised, but maybe grain-finished cattle in a lot of situations, but have you seen any innovative solutions for kind of conservation in addition to water conservation on properties to that next level? Or have you seen any kind of ways that farmers and ranchers are diversifying by both having cattle and other things in order to kind of be more resilient towards the future of not having enough water potentially to raise cattle on their land?
The short answer is yes and yes. We are seeing, all of our ranch kids now are highly educated. They are in school, they're on their phones, they are doing all this research. And it's a lot different than when you were doing it all by yourself as the grandmas. Our next generation that's coming up is very concerned about the environment. And they want to stay on the ground as well. They want to be there in the future generations. So they're paying close attention and they're using a lot more innovative methods that we didn't even have 20 years ago. And that's one reason I stay optimistic is that the ag has to keep growing with the times. We can't stay with the shovel when we can be using something else.
There's a lot of studies going on up in Grand County as well. Paul Bruchet and the Reeder Ranches up there are looking at a lot of different cover crops and forage crops, and they're also looking at fallowing, which is something that's been proposed to keep more water in the river. Tough in high alpine environments, you fallow something for a year, it takes 2 or 3 to come back, and you can't really fallow fruit trees or cows. But a lot of research is going into low water crops and how that might work to feed cattle.
One of the things that we did was regen farming. We had our huge worm farm, bigger than this building. And we would make our own fertilizers, or I shouldn't call it fertilizer, but our own brew and spread on the fields to compost. Yeah, I mean, it's doing those things that worm life. It's called underground farming. You gotta take care of it, and man, it's pretty cool stuff. So I'm not gonna go down that road too much.
All right, we have time for one more question. Marky, and your hands up. Oh, all right, you way back there. Sorry, Marky.
Right. To go back to that 1,800 gallons per cow number, I think there's some more of like a systemic level on how we engage with ranching and agriculture, as opposed to a more individual level, which I know we've been talking more about here. do you think, like among you yourselves, your children, colleagues in the industry, there is room to change how we systemically engage with agriculture and marketing to better conserve our water across the nation and in the valley?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Of course, there's room. Part of our problem in the high mountain areas is that we have a very, very limited growing season. There's not much that we can do with that, and so during that, in our area, it's about 49 to 56 days frost-free under a normal year. You really have to be very proactive in how you're using your water during the time that's available for you before those frosts set into your plants. I'm kind of skirting the answer to your question because it's just a different growing season that we have here, and how do we regenerate what we need to do with the amount of resources that we have in the time frame? That's a good thing for the AP students to figure out for us.
And you know, I'll just add a little bit, sort of going above and beyond just ag, is we haven't done a good job in this area and in this country of connecting land planning and water planning. The people who make the land planning decisions are not the same people as who have the water to sell and to provide. And that's starting to change a little bit, and we've got to do a much better job of that, of connecting our land use regulations and our water budgeting regulations to, not just for ag, but for urban centers and for growing people and growing plants. And that's something where there's a lot of room for improvement, I believe.
We are almost out of time. So if each of you could just take 30 seconds, 1 minute, and let our guests today know what you hope they will take away from this evening.
You know, I'm thrilled to see so many people here and such great questions and such great interest. And I guess I was thinking about this on the way up because I knew this question was coming, and I thought, uh-oh, I don't know what I'm going to say. But I was thinking about the John Muir quote, which I don't exactly remember, but it has to do with whenever you pull one thing in nature, it's connected to everything else. And that's sort of what this discussion is, and that I would hope we would all remember, is that we're all connected in this.
I'm going to second what she said.
That was a great answer.
I hope you all take away that people in agriculture are trying forever, not just themselves. At the end of the day, they are really, truly, like I said earlier, it's all about the land. It's not about your animal. Well, it is about your animals because you put your life, sweat, and tear in. But it is also about the land. And we're not here for a long time, but we're trying to do the best we can with what tools we have and working with Mother Nature in that process. So I hope it gives a glimpse. I hope I tried to do the best of giving a glimpse in agricultural in this valley. So, and if you want to know more, find me, and I will try to help explain more or get you more information if I didn't say anything correctly. But we're trying, you know, at the end of the day.
On that note, wanted to thank each and every one of you for your interest and attendance tonight. The more people we can educate in our communities, the better we'll all off be. So I want to thank you, guys, for speaking tonight and sharing your stories. I know I personally learned a lot. So wanted to thank the Colorado Water Trust team. We really loved working with you. And also wanted to thank Rocky Mountains for hosting this event. I know you guys put a lot of effort into it as well. And Pick Up Pizza for providing dinner. So thank you again for coming. If you have any questions, we'll be here for a few questions, but you can also get a hold of one of us and we'd be happy to answer any questions that we didn't get to tonight. So thank you so much for joining us.
Folks, there was lots of